In the midst of our attempt to hold Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary accountable to its mission, there have been several weeks of protests and uprisings in response to the Black lives that have been murdered. Here are what a few institutions and organizational bodies have had to say about it.
An abbreviated statement authored by the Black faculty and affirmed by faculty members, including current president and faculty member Lillian Rector of Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary. All around us are forces that continue unabated to dehumanize and destroy Black lives and the lives of other people of color in the United States. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDodd, and Ahmaud Arbery are the most recent victims of a long-standing regime of violence. We must say their names. At the same time, the COVID-19 pandemic and its overwhelming impact on Black and other communities of color have highlighted deep and widespread social and economic inequities evidenced by higher infection rates, disproportionate representation of Black and brown people as essential workers, and the lack of equitable health care. Taken together with militarized police, the cruelty of ICE detention facilities, overcrowded prisons, and underfunded schools, these are just a few of the ways we have seen the so-called American dream become based on creating nightmares for non-white people in the United States. We believe this sin of white supremacy continues to permeate our country from boardrooms to city streets and will remain in place until we collectively work with and for one another. The truth is that our institution has not been an exception to the entanglements and terrors of such hegemonic policies. As faculty members, we recognize and acknowledge the racism that subtly shaped irregularities in our recent presidential search process and the fact that those irregularities were antithetical to the values and commitments we seek to hold as an institution.
An abbreviated statement by the Black presidents and deans of schools and departments of theology and religion. We are Black presidents and deans serving at schools of theology, departments of religion, and African American studies across the nation. We cannot and will not be silent while threats are continuously uttered by the highest political leadership in our country, nor will we watch ongoing murders of Black people by police officers whose chief duty is meant to protect and serve. During our lifetimes, we have placed our credentials and often our very bodies on the line doing the work of justice making for our communities. Now is no different. In the days to come, we will do all in our power to resist the evils of racism in its many forms it presents itself, especially in our political systems and schools of higher education. We will not allow the violence directed at Black people and U.S. citizens protesting against police violence to be baptized in religious symbolism as if to say that is the way that our faith, any faith, that follows the way of love and justice demands we obey. Instead, we join the collective response to those who seek justice, liberation, and the end of white supremacy. No more.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his eulogy of James Reeb, urged us to ask and name not only the who did the killing, but also the what of James Reeb. In his words, when we move from the who to the what, the blame is wide and the responsibility grows. In the deaths of Breonna, Ahmaud, George, and many others, we know the who and we also know the what. And yet we fall short again and again to widen the circle of responsibility. As a nation, we seem to continually fail to resist this evil. As a nation, we opt instead to ask community of colors to remain calm and hold on just a little longer. How long is long enough and who gets to decide? Rebecca Ann Parker said that resisting evil is not about personal escape from guilt, sin, or punishment. It is about ending the harm that evil perpetuates and creating justice and abundance for all. This evil is more than personal. It is systemic, and it takes a systemic approach to dismantle it and end the harm perpetuated by systemic racism. Yet, again, the systemic evil begins in the heart. If we are ready to truly be the faith of free persons, and if we are truly committed to resourcing our mutual survival, then we must be ready to change our hearts so that we can widen our circle of responsibility to change our systems.
An abbreviated statement by the United Methodist Council of Bishops of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. The February killing of an unarmed black man, Ahmaud Arbery, in Brunswick, Georgia, continues to fill the news cycles in our hearts. The Council of Bishops joins the General Commission on Religion and Race and the General Board of Church and Society in condemning the senseless killing and racism and white supremacy in every form. It is time for us to reclaim the United Methodist social principles that name racism as sin and states that it is antithetical to the gospel itself. As bishops of the church, we sound the clarion call for the eradication of racism and white supremacy. Racism is real, and it must no longer exist in our communities.
An abbreviated statement by Jan Love, Dean, Candler School of Theology, and Interim Provost of Emory University. I write to you in grief and anger over the murders of Ahmaud Arbery near Brunswick, Georgia, Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, and George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They are but the most recent and publicized of our black sisters and brothers to be killed by those who hold or think they should hold power. As Dean of Candler, I want to say to our black students, alumni, staff, and faculty, I see you. I mourn with you. I stand with you for the protection of black lives and share in your righteous rage at the brutal, systemic racism that terrorizes people of color. I give thanks for all of the gifts you bring to our community. Surely this is a time for lament and outrage. It is also a time for recommitment. Even though I have actively advocated for racial equality and justice for much of my life as a white woman in leadership, I acknowledge that I am part of a larger system of oppression in ways I do not fully grasp. In this moment, I and other white people must renew our commitment to invest the time and effort to listen, learn, and take action to dismantle white supremacy, to work daily to counter hatred, reject intolerance, and confront systemic racism with courage, conviction, and creativity.
An abbreviated statement by Thomas V. Wolfe, president of Iliff School of Theology. Again, yet again, another black person has been murdered by a police officer. Today we remember George Floyd. America has witnessed his murder in vivid detail. The 4 attending officers have been fired. The criminal justice system has yet to speak. We support the decision to arrest the officer whose knee was on the neck of George Floyd and call upon the criminal justice system to respond appropriately with respect to the actions of the other officers involved as we wait for due process, action, a different outcome from all the rest, justice. The tone at the top has politicized the issue and with it clouded the vision for change, disguised the chance for seeing racism for what it is. An inability and or unwillingness to admit to acts of sustained and continued violence against black and brown communities and other communities of color. A lack of self-reflection, compassion, and accountability. This has all been traded on a calculation that stereotypes the base and assumes what it will not approve in November. George Floyd's life matters. Black lives matter. The bold and humble work of creating change must not be underestimated nor allowed to be diminished. It is our will and spirit to speak and act for justice. May our whole selves show up, with George Floyd's loved ones in their loss and waiting, with those for whom this whole tragic event instills more fear, and with each other as we build communities for change.
We condemn the insidious white supremacy woven into the fabric of the United States of America. We condemn the anti-Blackness established and perpetuated through systems and structures in both national and local governments, houses of worship, and institutions of theological education. We condemn the way white supremacy and anti-Blackness work its way into the academy through tokenism, bias, dehumanizing disregard, inequitable labor, and the erasure of Blackness that occurs across scholarship and in classrooms. We condemn the rampant police brutality in the United States that continues to extinguish the lives of Black mothers, fathers, sons and daughters, and denies Black people everywhere their fundamental freedoms.
And now, here's a statement from the Board of Trustees from Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary. Actually, we don't need another statement. Nor does it take 8 minutes and 46 seconds to recognize that change has to begin at home. What we need, what we really, really need is moral imagination for an internal transformation that connects itself to this global revolution that is going on all around us, which altogether, all of it is long overdue. What we need is leadership from our Board of Trustees that is capable of doing better. Do better, Garrett. Do better.